Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly there detailing Canada's plans to evacuate Canadians trying to flee the Israel-Hamas war. A plan announced last night and detailed this morning. Yesterday, both the Conservatives and NDP called on the government to help out Canadians trapped in the war zones. The front bench is here to talk about that. Elliot Hughes is a political commentator and senior associate with Summa Strategies. He's a former senior advisor to Liberal finance and defence ministers. Former Alberta MLA and cabinet minister Gary Mara is with us. He's the president and CEO now of the Canada West Foundation. Anne McGrath is the national director of the NDP, and Marika Walsh is a senior political reporter with the Globe and Mail. Hi, everybody. Good to see you tonight during a pretty heavy week. Marika, we'll start off just sort of on the plan that the minister announced today. The other minister in charge of the file, Pablo Rodriguez, was on my program a few minutes ago, and he said anybody who wants to get on this flight, like they guarantee that they will evacuate everyone who wants to leave. That could be a pretty big endeavor.
Yeah, it could be a very big endeavor, but it's also a question of how quickly that information gets out to the people there. I heard his interview with you where he said, you know, that they will be contacting everybody, but we spoke with two different groups who said they haven't received any details or they've received conflicting details from the government. And so because of that, because they don't have that precise information about when exactly the evacuation flights start, how quickly they would even be able to get on a flight, because it's about 150 people per flight, that they are still pursuing a commercial flight option. And my colleague Jeff York, who's in Israel, says Canadians have chartered sort of their own flight to get out. So it just goes, I think, to show how confusing it is and how much of a challenge the government has in getting the information to Canadians on the ground, and the frustrations that Canadians have there of how slow the information has been to be hammered down and to become more clear as to what to expect.
Did the government have any other choice, Elliot, do you think, than to send planes in to help Canadians get out?
Well, it's a very fast-moving situation. I think the government acted appropriately in offering this service in what is a very difficult time. I think it's pretty much in lockstep with a lot of other countries. You know, Argentina, Brazil, and so on are also sending planes to bring back some Canadians. I think there's about 4,200 Canadians there. So no, I think they acted in the right way. But to Marika's point, it is a complex endeavor. I think we saw this a little bit during COVID, but we need to understand the added complexities here of it being an active war zone that is very much still active. And that makes it even more challenging. The military is now involved with the Polaris and the flights there. They need to ensure that the route that it's taking is okay and safe. You don't want to put anyone further into danger. But no, the government has acted swiftly, I would say, and now the trick is making sure that the Canadians who do want to get out are able to get to the airport, see the news, see what's available to them, and then making sure that from Athens they get back to Canada as well.
Yeah, I think getting that information out to both Marika and Elliot's points, Gary, to those individuals who are there is definitely not going to be easy. I know that I can see the argument that they're working quickly, but there are a lot of people that I think all news organizations have heard from over the past 2 days who are living in like complete confusion and very much feeling a lot of despair because they aren't getting a ton of communication. How hard do you think it's going to be to get the message out to 4,000 people that there are these flights available?
It's challenging, but I think I want to go back to something that we talked about here on the front bench a couple of years ago, and that was the shambolic withdrawal from Kabul and Afghanistan. There was a parliamentary committee report that spoke to the lessons and the learnings that came from that. That report was tabled, I think in June of last year. So there's been nearly a year and a half, maybe 15 months since that report's been out. And it talks about the need for the role of the Canadian Armed Forces as being responsible for the logistics of it, and the communications is critically important. This is the same Canadian Armed Forces that I understand we don't have assets on the ground like they do, or in the region as they do in the United States and Britain. But, you know, Elliot's commented that other countries have sent their planes in. They've evacuated people already. That would include Brazil and Mexico and Lithuania and Bulgaria, Albania, Argentina, Thailand, Poland. None of those countries that I'm aware of have military assets on the ground either, but they acted more quickly. I think that it's important that, you know, to know that while support for the military doesn't necessarily win you votes in a domestic election, there's actually a really important role that they have in helping communicate and evacuate these Canadians at a time of need. And I think that we should really be rethinking this idea that we can cut $1 billion from the military budget at a time like this, when we actually need a Canadian Globemaster C-17 to be on the ground and loading up with Canadians and bringing them safely home.
It kind of feels, Anne, like the government, the global affairs in particular, and transport are leading this over the military. The military is certainly providing all the logistics, but I listened to that press conference with General Wayne Eyre, the Chief of Defense Staff, today, and it did seem to be very much, directed from the top down by government affairs. Minister Rodriguez, I asked him point blank, like, could this have been done earlier, safely? And he unequivocally said no.
Well, that's a bit of a surprising response, because it seems to me that that's the #1 job right now, is to get that done. And I don't think that, I know that it was a long weekend, Thanksgiving and those kinds of things, but this is an international crisis. There is so much sadness and fear and in the region itself, but also with Canadians, Palestinian Canadians, Jewish Canadians are reeling, I think, right now. And one of the things that I think is primary for the government has to be to get any Canadian citizen that wants to return to Canada, to get them out as quickly as possible. It is already very late.
There's a plan, Marika, I would say at this point, and they were pretty detailed about how it will work and how many Canadians it can help when it comes to those who are stuck in Israel. But for the Canadians who are in Gaza, and I fully acknowledge it's obviously, a really perilous situation that, nobody can get in or out, essentially. It's very difficult to, but basically there's no plan. It appears there are some conversations with Jordan, it sounds like, in order to help out the Canadians who are in the West Bank. But for those who are in Gaza, the minister made it sound like a humanitarian corridor was necessary to even facilitate even a tiny bit of that.
Yeah, and this, I think, is one of those cases where Canada is not in the driver's seat, right? There's a siege on Gaza from Israel. Egypt has not opened its border with Gaza, and the minister said today that it's essentially Canada would partner up with the UN if the UN does some sort of evacuation, but it's not something that it can lead on its own. So certainly there are more questions to be had there, but it didn't appear from the minister's comments earlier that there was really much that Canada was thinking that it could actually do on its own to address that. I think in terms of how things have played out with Canada overall in the last week, the fact that Canada doesn't tend to have evacuations when there's still commercial flights, I think might explain why there was a lag here, because I think they were just thinking that, well, there are commercial flights and so we don't have to do anything, and clearly that was an assessment that they reassessed after a few days. But I think the U.S. is still going that route even with Israel.
I wanted to turn our discussion for the last few moments and just sort of talk about the collective reaction politically to what's unfolded in the Middle East. We've had some pretty specific statements made, in particular, Elliot, by the leader of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister. They were at a rally together just a few days ago. Speak, if you could, for a few moments to the significance of, if you believe there is, of Canadian political leaders saying something on what's happening.
Yeah, I think it's very important, and I think it's very important that there is unison in what they're saying. Condemning this awful and barbaric terrorist attack for what it is very important. The pieces that come after this, figuring out, is there a road to peace afterwards, is something that will come. At the moment, though, I think it's very important for our political leaders to stand together, shoulder to shoulder, at a time where people are quite divisive around a lot of issues in this country, but I think can come around to and agree on how horrific this act was and the impact it is having on people in the region and folks back home here in Canada as well. I think it's really important at this time that the leader of the opposition, Mr. Singh, the Prime Minister, all come out very forcefully and condemn it together to show people that this type of act is just not accepted whatsoever in the world that we have, even if we have some political disagreements along the way.
Do you think the challenge, Gary, to that resolve could potentially grow as this becomes more protracted?
Well, actually, that's a really good question, and it's hard to know what the answer is. But I'd agree overall with the thesis that Elliott's just put out, that all Canadian leaders should be standing shoulder to shoulder. I mean, I look at what Minister Joly and what Minister Rodriguez said. I don't doubt for a moment that they are sincere in their desire to make sure that Canadians are safe, regardless of whether they're Israelis or whether they're Palestinians. I don't doubt that for a moment, that is their sincere desire. And I think that working together is always the better plan. And I think that perhaps the Prime Minister should call upon the other leaders and say, look, what is it we can put together as a plan collectively, because these are all Canadians that are over there, and whatever political disputes there are in the House of Commons, let's set that aside and put Canadians first.
And just final point to you, there largely politicians in this country have been on the same page. There's one example at the provincial level where that's not necessarily the case, and there's been some back and forth on that. I know that the issue is certainly one that has been debated for many years in the NDP, and there was supposed to be a few resolutions up for debate at the convention this week. I think I saw something that they will no longer be debated. Is that true?
No. Delegates to the convention submit all sorts of, and EDAs, riding associations, submit a lot of resolutions, and then all of the delegates vote online about what the top 10 that they want debated in each category, in each block of resolutions. And the top 10 in that particular category didn't include those resolutions. There are also emergency resolutions coming forward to convention. I expect there will be something about this in there. I do want to go back to what I think was Marika was saying earlier about the role of Canada. And as we said earlier, job one, of course, is to get Canadians safely out of the region, every Canadian that wants to leave. But there are other things that our political leaders can be doing and that Canada can be doing, such as calling for an immediate ceasefire, working to establish the humanitarian corridor, and just recognizing that we have a humanitarian crisis has already begun and is going to accelerate, and that we need to get humanitarian aid to the people in the area.
Yeah, they certainly. I would say it's fair to say they were doing the last two. They are not calling for a ceasefire right now. That's a pretty, it would, in the world as it stands at the moment, that would be a pretty controversial, I think, decision.
Yeah.
But I do understand that the ask for it. But the other two things, I mean, they are insistent that they will continue to provide aid.
They are.
Yeah, and
I think the question is, go ahead, Anne.
Sorry, go
I was
quick,
just going to say, Canada can play a role in pushing for these things at the international level. Can't do it on their own, but they can be a big part of the leadership in that.
Yeah, and I think from that press conference this morning, the question is whether Canada wants to do more and wants to stick its head out more on this side of it. And it's not clear to me yet that that's something, Melanie Joly wouldn't even talk about what specific things would be a war crime in her eyes. She just said she called on all sides to follow international law. So I think that there's still more to see. I think your point earlier about how much more challenging this gets the longer it gets, I think is very true. And I think it is for all parties who are going to be back in the House of Commons next week, and how Canada and the federal government navigates this as the pressure mounts and as we see more fighting, I think will be a real test for this government.
Okay.